Well, g'day and welcome back to Reality Check. And today we've got a very interesting story from three people who were around the Congress on the evening prior to the UAP hearing. And it's a very interesting story, and I'll just introduce each person first and then we'll get into the yarn. Sarah Gamm is an old Reality Check veteran. Welcome back, Sarah. She works with the US Army Corps of Engineers in Virginia, but she's previously worked as an expert geointelligence analyst for both private defence contractors and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. She's an expert in anomaly detection, characterisation and resolution. She has also previously supported the UAP task force while working at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. She's talking to us today in her private capacity about what she witnessed with multiple people the evening before the UAP hearing on Tuesday, the 9th of September, before the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee's task force on the declassification of federal secrets. They really are going to have to reduce that name title. Dr. Anna Brady-Estevez is a newbie to Reality Check, but Anna, you are very welcome. She's a scientist and founding partner of American DeepTech, a deep technology investment firm. She's also an advisory board member for the UAP Disclosure Foundation and a former program director at the US government's National Science Foundation, leading its commercial portfolios in areas such as space technologies, energy and digital assets. While in government, Anna co-chaired, alongside NASA, the US Space Economy Interagency Working Group, a government group that also publicly shared information on UAP alongside other leading-edge technologies. She's also co-chaired, alongside the White House Office of Science Technology Policy, the United States Digital Assets R&D agenda, and has led deep tech and AI portfolios that have gone on to achieve more than $18 billion in total company valuation. And she's spoken frequently on the innovation and economic growth aspects of UAP. Earlier this year, she briefed Congress and shared her experiences speaking as a member of the UAP experts panel, talking about how intriguingly UAP tech is here and the race is on. She's got a PhD in chemical and environmental engineering from Yale University and a Bachelor of Science in chemical engineering from the Johns Hopkins University. A total overachiever by the looks of it. On the evening
Those are
of...
kind words. I'm just happy to be here with you, Ross.
So on the evening of Tuesday, the 9th of October, these two very impressive women joined UAP experiencer and Reality Check veteran Chris Bledsoe. Welcome back, Chris, for what turned out to be an extraordinary evening of sightings over the White House and the Congress. And Anna, because you're the newbie, I'm going to kick you off and say, what did you see, please?
So we saw what appeared to be orbs. So basically, and I've got to admit that there was so much light initially because we were standing directly opposite the Capitol that I didn't see that. I'm the voice saying, where is it? Where is it? For the first one. And then I saw some of the later ones, which appeared to be lights moving around erratically, orbs, and exhibiting interesting characteristics. But I guess I would just say that really one of the things that brought me to Chris is that he's, I would say, the leading observational scientist who sees more of this than anyone else. So I know that I've seen quite a bit of this with Chris. I've also seen it independently. So I'd say that this light phenomena can represent a wide range of things. There are times that it appears that there are craft, in such lights and orbs, and there are other times that they, appear to be more just balls of light. And I would say I've seen those both close in and far away. So it was, I think it was interesting to see that over the Capitol, the People's House, right before the UAP hearings.
Can I ask you this, Anna? And I know that you will be a scientist and rigorous in your response and your objectivity. Do you think it was a total coincidence that this was the night before the UAP hearing?
Well, the other thing, but beyond being a scientist, is I'm somebody who absolutely loves to walk the National Mall. So I've lived in the Washington area since 2009. So I really enjoy walking the mall at night. And no, I don't think it's a coincidence.
So let's talk in detail then. I think we'll come to you, Sarah. As I understand it, was there some kind of attempt to summon or invite the phenomenon to show itself that night? And were you and Chris involved? Because I know that both of you in the past have talked to me about psionics and your capacity, if you like, to telepathically or psychically engage with the phenomenon. Something, of course, which a lot of people are very skeptical about. But was there an effort to connect that night?
Absolutely, there was an effort to and here's Krypton. Um, there was absolutely an intent to connect. I mean, there was a few of us left at the pre-hearing gathering, and there was just so much good energy there. And a few of us didn't, we weren't quite ready to go home yet. So, yeah, we set the intent to walk a few blocks and try to see what we could. We knew there was, light pollution, and we're in the middle of DC, but why not try since we're all together? And Chris offered so kindly to, lead the charge and start asking and started his prayer, or I don't know what proper word to call it, if he calls it a prayer or the initial intent to see them and kind of make contact type thing.
Now, Chris, that's a perfect segue from Sarah. Thank you, Sarah, to introduce
You're
you again.
welcome.
Chris, just explain to us, please, how you do what you do and what were you doing that night to invite the phenomenon?
Well, you know, um, this thing's been a part of my life for the last half years, and I'm constantly connected to it. It's part of telepathic communication that never leaves, and so we were all together having this reception with a group of amazing individuals in Capitol Hill Club with Eric Burleson and Anna Luna, and I was thrilled to be invited there. And we just walked out afterwards. It was early, 10 o'clock, and Anna's like, "You guys want to go skywatch?" And I said, "Why not?" And so our group went over to the Library of Congress and stood up on the platform, and I just led the group in a little prayer, or it's what it is. It's a prayer to me to so it can hear me, and it does. That's how it hears me, and it responded like right away.
Now, Chris, when you do that, I mean, obviously, there are a lot of people out there watching this who will say this is all hokum and this is a bunch of well meaning, good folk. You're a God fearing man who see it through a religious prism. But essentially, let me be the deep skeptic for a moment, the honorary debunker. This is a confirmational bias. It was a complete coincidence that there were some objects in the sky, and if you accept the findings of one notorious debunker, these were just birds circling in the sky that were reflected by the lights from the city. What do you say to that dismissive notion?
Well, for every one of those, there are 10,000 that that sees it as real. Around me, I have very few people that I don't even pay attention. I just think they're uninformed, and one day they'll see the truth. We had so many people from the government there. If you don't want to hear these experts say they saw what they saw, then they'll never believe. So I don't waste my time on
And
that.
I do sympathize, Ross, in that, as a scientist, I mean, I think that had I not seen this that night and had a broader body of experience and really been listening to what people both in the government and the private sector have disclosed, I would be asking the same questions. I think in some cases it comes from a curiosity and an eagerness actually to know what's out there. And sometimes a disappointment, in terms of not having the experience with, certain types of experiences or body of evidence. But I guess we are at a stage right now, where we've had Congress talk about this, the president talk about this, members of the government, members of the military, but think about the people at home. Have you seen something? Have your family members seen something? And so at this point, I think it's less about, I'm certainly not here to convince people. It's more to share information about something historic that has happened here at a critical time, but is also happening all over the country to people. So it's really more of an invitation and a validation for people that are seeing unusual and anomalous things. It might feel like it's time to dig further. And with all respect, that it maybe isn't time for everybody to engage with this, and it can be disruptive to some people's worldview. So I totally respect that.
I can tell you, Anna, I know we've got to respect the identities of some of the people that were there that evening, but it would be helpful for our audience to get an idea of just who was there that evening, whom we can identify. And as I understand it, it was quite a high-powered group of people, many of whom have worked in government and defense and intelligence.
And thank you for saying that. And I'm happy to go into a bit about the people who are there, but just also to step back from the hierarchy here. I think we've been thinking so much about what is the president going to say? What is the government going to say? And we're happy to use our body of experience, but so many people around the country, farmers, teachers, police officers, everybody, there's a number of people that are seeing this. So I also don't want to take away from any's experience that, isn't a government worker. But that said, one of the people who invited us to share her name is Dr. Donna Roberts. Donna Roberts is really, great person commercially, so commercially forward and innovation forward. She's come on as our chief scientist at American DeepTech, but most recently she was the deputy chief scientist of the International Space Station. So she was active. So
that's really something. That's something. That's a very that's a high level scientist.
She's and another person there who's welcomed us to use his name is Eric Zydak, who is the deputy chief investment officer for one of the nation's leading pension funds, Pacific Gas and Electric. Somebody who's been forward on this topic previously. Sid Goldberg of the Gaia Network. So these are some people who were willing to speak to their names, but there were also a number of people from other agencies who they're just still in government and they didn't want to speak for their agencies. But we found that the innovation forward people, the economic growth people, while coming forward in a spirit of humility, are very much, many of them full speed ahead on this. And they started out with an openness. They held interagency discussions with the private sector on this last year and this year. And these are people that it's not their first time seeing it either, for the most part. I think for everybody had seen this before.
Now, Sarah, you're the geospatial intelligence expert. You've worked with imagery. You know how to analyze photographs and videos. Tell me, please, obviously you were there that night, but what did you see and why do you believe that what you saw that night was anomalous? And we'll probably run sections of the video as you're talking over this.
Okay. Such a good question, because at first, my optimistic brain always wants to think something's immediately is anomalous, but the science brain kicks in and goes through the things of, well, I know it's not, parallax because I'm not watching this from a video like I usually have done when I was a part of the task force. And I think of, the five maneuverables, and I go through that of, one of them before I started recording, it's actually what triggered my brain to go look at flight radar and start recording. So, but early on, one of the orbs that I saw made like a step pattern, almost like you're going downstairs, like that type of step pattern. And it went very fast, suddenly stopped, made 90-degree turn, dropped altitude, and then did that again, did it a couple of times. And at the end of that, I actually saw like a gold orange color that was also produced from it. And so pretty early on, we knew this wasn't, a drone. It wasn't an aircraft. It was, producing light. It wasn't reflecting light. No
So
bird could do that I know of.
that's a crucial point. So it was self-illuminating, which is quite a common feature of these orbs or
Yep.
craft or
Yeah.
however you want to term them.
Yeah.
Just explain what you mean by self-illuminating.
So self-illuminating, like it's not reflecting light, so it's not, or like a bird. So light reflecting off of feathers on a bird. So if something's illuminating in the sky, which sometimes there's, spotlights and stuff that are, or building lights that are illuminating in the sky. So we also didn't see any wings or flight pattern like that from a bird, and I'm not certain what bird could do a vertical figure eight that we had observed for 10 to 15 minutes. Um, yeah, it did all the maneuverables I could think of, but when I saw that step pattern and then the next orb we saw, or maybe it might have been at the same time, that was when I was like, I need to check flight radar because we were looking in the direction of Reagan Airport. And so just to get my analyst brain going, I needed to check the data. Granted, I know flight radar doesn't always disclose every single thing that's in the air. Um, and then started thinking about a drone. Like, we're looking in the direction of the Capitol building, possibly the White House. There's not going to be a drone there. And plus, what drone can also maneuver that way? So yeah, the science brain quickly went through a lot of stuff as I was trying to record some of the things while we were all in awe. And I mean, you could hear our excitement in the video. It was very real.
Anna, coming back to you for a moment, obviously you'd know your history, and one of the reasons this evening's events was so significant was it does seem far too much of a coincidence that this happened the evening prior to probably one of the most important UAP hearings in history. There's also events of 1952, July 1952, the two weekends of the so-called Washington flyovers, where anomalous objects were seen over Washington, D.C., seen by fighter pilots that were sent to engage them. They were tracked on radar, seen by multiple civilian and military witnesses. It is uncanny, isn't it? Because one, of course, of the most common criticisms that happens is people often say, why don't these things land on the White House lawn? But in 1952, there was a quite extraordinary, still unexplained event that took place over Washington. And I don't want to overstate what you guys saw, but there's a multiple group of witnesses who clearly feel they saw something highly anomalous.
I think that's right.
What do you want to say, Sarah?
Did I say? Oh, I was just going to say, you've said coincidence a few times now, and there's no such thing as coincidence. There's only synchronicity.
Absolutely. Anna, what's your earliest experience yourself as an experiencer? Obviously you've seen things with Chris, but you alluded earlier to the possibility that you've seen things outside of your time with Chris.
Yes. And so in terms of the one, I'm now seeing that there were some things that were earlier, but the one that I would say is clearest, and that was clearest to me, which I've shared previously in public and in the government, I would first say people tried to dissuade me from sharing. So there was very much people telling me, we want you to be an honest broker, and to be an honest broker, people can't know that you've seen things. And I thought, that doesn't sound very honest at all.
Who's saying this to you, Anna? Who was making those kind of
requests? It's interesting. In a lot of cases, these are people they might be pro-disclosure, and they're very open-minded, and it's more that they're concerned that other people are going to write somebody off, for instance, if they say they've seen it, as opposed to being a third party, kind of analyzing people who have seen it. Or I say the third rail of this really is, at a time that faith is unfortunately literally under fire, that this is like the third rail, is that many people who are comfortable with this from the hard tech scientific side, they don't like any mention of the consciousness, the spirituality. So I've got to be frank that I wanted to keep the two things separate myself and say, well, it's kind of, if there's a phenomena, if there's electricity, a lot of things run on electricity. It doesn't have to be the same thing. But I have seen from a scientific standpoint the pattern of the prayer directly preceding, some of this phenomena, and there are people that have that engagement through other means, basically. But I saw it actually for the first time, something that was very UAP connected, that included orbs that came into close range. So probably it's kind of like a ball of the sun type thing within about 35 or so feet away. And the size was that of a ball. And the reason I'm kind of going in and out on size is that while I didn't have an exact measurement on it, it was in front of a tree trunk. So since the rough sizes of a tree, that kind of gives you a band to work with. And went out to an airstrip that was nearby, and something flashed in, so this anomalous transport of flash in, and upon really zeroing in on a frame there less than probably a 30th or a 60th of a second, there's something that looks craft-like, so who who would have thought? You say, is there something unusual there? And then it was unusual looking. So at that time, to be honest, I wasn't sure. I was out of country. I was in Belize. So I was, and I wasn't somebody who was interested in UFOs, UAPs at all. And so I saw that and I thought, well, is this extraterrestrial? Is it advanced military tech? And I was out of the United States. So I thought, well, if it's advanced military tech, whose is it, right? But so I was not sure at that time, but certainly, as a scientist, as a technologist, in terms of there being much higher performing technologies, craft, phenomena than what is openly acknowledged by everybody, and I think it's great that so many people are having the conversations now. There are things that for those that are looking at high performance, we need to pay attention to them.
One of the things you said at the Congressional UAP Experts panel was that UAP tech is impossible to quantify at this point due to how interwoven it is in quantum and biotech research. But you actually ended by saying it is not credible or viable to act like this isn't going on. And I just want to commend you for your courage, your bravery in speaking out like that. Something's obviously deeply influenced you to feel strongly that you have to take a public stand in speaking about this issue. Can I just come back to that craft for a moment, though? Can you describe in detail why you believe the craft was a technology and not just, for example, another orb or phosphorescence or glowing plasma?
Well, it just looked more like a hard object, and I think part of it was that that split second perception, right? So you get that split second perception where sometimes your mind is actually able to assess quite a lot, even faster than your logic moves. So there was both the perception, but then there was also the ability to see an image that had something unusual looking there. That it was unusual. It was unusual looking. So it didn't look like, I would contrast that with something that looks like the sun, that is more like a ball of energy, which I'd say Chris has amazing imagery, over time, without even having to share a small percentage of it, of exceptional orbs, also harder looking craft, and I think the government has shown some harder looking craft. Obviously, there's radar data on some of this. I mean, in my personal case, I didn't have radar on the vision.
So just coming back to that interesting quote that you gave at the UAP panel, I found it intriguing because what it suggests to me, Anna, is that you don't just believe, you know. Do you know that the phenomenon is real? Do you know that there are technologies engaging with this planet that aren't being disclosed by the US government?
I would also hesitate to say that aren't being disclosed by the U.S. government, because I think some parts of the U.S. government have been doing their part to disclose, and to shine a light on this. So, I mean, I think from what I've heard, there is a serious stewardship, of this, and some people in different parts of the government have different roles and responsibilities. So, some entities are responsible for human health, others are responsible for regulation of financial markets, others it's asymmetric capabilities from a defense standpoint, others, it's gathering and keeping intelligence. So I would say that there are parts of the government, it's certainly the Congress, but also the innovators in the government who have been trying to share this. And this is well beyond an open secret, I would say. So it's not a secret, it's not an open secret, and this has been going on for a very long time. There's a large number of people who have been exposed to this, both in their government but also their personal capacities. And then when we started having the conversation with entrepreneurs and scientists more broadly, because we received some very interesting briefings, we found them valuable. Rather than wanting to keep them for ourselves, I asked the question, can this be shared further? So as an example, Dr. Hal Puthoff came in, and we now also work with Hal, but he came in and gave us an amazing briefing, and we said, wow, could this be shared further? Invited entrepreneurs in. And what we found was in the debrief, because we were expecting that this was going to be perceived as unusual, and we found that even without having a very high trust relationship with people, we're finding 30 to 50% of innovators were sharing that they've seen anomalous phenomena. That's not always a craft, it's not always an orb, but they've seen some things that are outside the bounds of explained science. So I said to the United States National Science Foundation, which is very innovation forward, we were able to have conversations where I would say, this is obvious to everybody. I mean, we could never say this isn't a thing, because we would lose credibility with the people we serve, the scientists. So I do think it is detrimental to institutions that try to tell people they haven't seen what they've seen, because, whether it's 1 in 3, 1 in 2, people sitting watching this have either seen it or they haven't, but many of them have.
You've taken a very high-level leadership position at the Science Foundation, the U.S. government Science Foundation. You're, basically one of the advisory members. You've worked with NASA. You've worked with the
SBA, a senior investment advisor with the SBA and a national program director.
Obviously, you've worked at a very high level in government in science policy. You've worked on with the Science Foundation. You've worked with the White House Office Science Technology Policy. You've worked with NASA. Where is the obstruction coming? I mean, I talk to a lot of scientists who say that it is nonsensical for us to continue the nonsense of denying the reality of UAP technology and the fact that there is clearly something intelligent that is non-human that is engaging with this planet. Why is it being obstructed inside somewhere in the US government?
Well, there are both things that are real, and there are things that are imagined. So I think some leaders have really shared that they've had a very hard time. We're grateful for their leadership and what some of those people and those whistleblowers have gone through. I would contrast that with on the U.S. Space Economy Interagency. These are people that are leaders in space technology from across the government, and they're trusted and empowered by their organizations. So we brought this forward. We had public days where we would bring forth the most important space technologies. So both, I think, December 18th and January 16th or 17th, these recordings are online. And we brought forth a number of the most important space technologies: launch, satellites, in-space semiconductors, in-space biotechnology, moon infrastructure, asteroid mining. And we dedicated probably about 30% or more of the day to UAP technologies. So I received nothing but great collaboration and support from my colleagues. So way less actual friction, by the way, and something like digital assets. I won't go into that, but you can imagine if that was more of a, let's call it a 50-50. So I was really shocked to not see massive headwinds on the UAP topic amongst the innovators and those responsible for economic growth. Now, we do hear people so on the upside, right, from the economic growth, we say, well, if you can have much higher performing energy technologies, if you can have higher performing spacecraft, there's so many great things that can come from that abundance. There are also people that believe, okay, well, if you can flash in, and if you flash in with a weapon, that's a really bad day, right? That's people think that that's could be civilization ending. So I do think that some of the people who are trying to constrain this, it's what they share is it's that basis of concern. And
Can I, before I come back to Sarah and Chris, I just want to pin you down on one point. Do you believe that the US government knows that UAP, non-human intelligence technology, has been recovered by the US government and or private aerospace companies?
Well, we've been told that. Yeah, so we've certainly been told that. So yes, I think that's been documented. It's been shared in Congress. It was shared with me. So I'd say it's already been public, and yes. So that's, it's more like who is paying attention and who, for whom is that relevant?
And just acknowledging your leadership on this, have you suffered any stigma, any taboo, any loss of career as a result of your speaking out and taking this leadership role?
No, not at all. I mean, I do think it's something that can be somewhat divisive, so we're never gonna, it's a bit off brand, honestly, from the standpoint that, typically as an investor, you focus on what are the things that have made people a lot of money. So for me, that's energy, it's space tech, it's AI, it's sustainability, it's in biotech. So usually it's really from a business standpoint, you stick to talking about what has performed. But we listen to innovators. So we just feel like we need to listen to people, and humility is warranted in the private sector and certainly in government.
So, Chris, I want to come back to you for a moment. When you made that psychical, telepathic, psionic, whatever you want to call it, connection, is it a religious thing for you? Are you appealing to God, a Christian God, to engage with you? Or what are you doing exactly in your mind when you're seeking to engage and invite the phenomenon to appear?
Well, this is 18 years worth of this, so there's a long history and a lot of people's witnessed it. But to answer that question, my book is called UFO of God for a reason, because I was at rock bottom, ready to do the unthinkable and crying out to God, and it came, and it took my Crohn's disease away, and the rest is history. But I never stop calling on God, and that's all I do. The same thing I did 18 years ago, and I've done it in front of 1,000 people, and it shows up every time. And so
what do you feel like that night when you were connecting with whatever those objects were in the sky? What did you feel?
I felt the same thing I always do. Is I call on the Holy Spirit, and that's who I call the Great Mother, the Holy Trinity. I was raised that way, and so I've never changed. But it's just beautiful connection that it gives this telepathic connection, but also a feeling that is just joyous and wonderful, and it makes people cry, and it does all kinds of things, and it's just.
And so you were in no doubt that evening prior to the UAP hearing that what was manifesting that night was indeed connected to the prayer that you'd invited them to appear. You do believe that there is a cause and an effect, that basically that wasn't some kind of coincidence. As Sarah says, it was a synchronicity. You're adamant that there was a response to your prayer.
well, 1,000%. There are thousands of people that has witnessed it with me, and sometimes it comes, like Anna says, really close. I mean, feet away, and it's just obvious to those who are around it, that witness it, that see it. Um,
And
and
this
I
was
have,
interfaith prayer as well, so there were a number of different Protestant denominations present. There were Catholics, there was Jewish, were faith. So it's been interfaith as well.
yeah.
That's actually where I'm coming to with you, Sarah, next, which is, do you think it's necessary for there to be prayer or a religious prism through which we see this? Because I sense from you and I have spoken in the past about intuition, the psychical abilities that you've demonstrated in the past. What do you feel, and what did you feel that night when there was this connection happening with the phenomenon?
Yeah, I thank you. I felt so much joy from them. So I didn't try to connect with my heart space with it for a little bit. I actually even asked Chris if that was okay. Like I felt like I was intruding in his energy. So I did ask him if it was all right. And of course he was like, yeah. um, but I immediately felt from them this playful, joyful feeling. Like they were having just as good of a time as we did. We were so happy and elated. I mean, it was pretty amazing, but like the synchronicity part, they knew we were going to be there. They knew to be ready and to say something to us. So I don't believe that religion needs to be a part of it, because when it comes down to it, what is religion? Religion is love. It preaches love, it shares love, it spreads love, and that's the intent. All of us there were about love and for the joyful part, and also the friendship. Like a lot of us are really good friends. So what better time to show up and make it a historic night of it, as it was. So, no, I don't think that religion needs to be there. But it is good to have the intent. So, saying a prayer or having some sort of space that you talk and you communicate with them, letting them know that you're coming from a place of love, which is prayer.
I just
And
wanted
Chris,
to
I
double check.
wanted to be sorry. I kind of wanted to keep these things very separate, but then as a scientist, I've seen that it has corresponded every time with prayer previously. So I think that's been very interesting from a pattern recognition standpoint.
And just to set the
Well,
scene for what you're about to talk about, Anna, as I understand it, you've been to Chris's home on multiple occasions and witnessed the phenomenon with Chris. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, yeah. So I guess just kind of briefly, a group of us went down there, and I think he had mentioned this previously on your show. So that included some interagency colleagues, and I would say we really went down from a more techno interested standpoint. So kind of wanting to see hard crafts, get more data. And that is certain that persists as an area of interest, is kind of what can be built. But it was interesting to see the precision of that engagement, which, so I do believe that, people can probably experience the phenomenon in a wide range of ways. I've only seen it directly after prayer. So with Chris kind of saying prayer with a group, and then all of a sudden it pops out, or kind of races across the sky. So I didn't want, I think there's what people want this to be, and then there's the body of data and evidence. And so it's not really about my some people have very strong preferences where they don't want it to be one way or the other. I actually did have a preference that I wanted to keep the spiritual and the UAP separate, but that's just not what the data that I've experienced looked like.
Why do
Yeah.
we do that? I mean, I do the same thing. I must confess, for years, I've resisted the idea that there is any kind of spiritual connection to UAPs. I could deal with the idea of a technology, little green men from planet Zug, but the idea of there being a psychical, spiritual, psionic, whatever you want to call it, connection with the phenomenon just freaked me out, frankly. And it wasn't, frankly, until I saw it at Esalen with people from the Skywatcher team that I suddenly realized I'm ignoring possibly the most important aspect of the whole phenomenon. Can I ask you this, Anna? You're the scientist, and you're an eminent scientist. You've worked at the highest levels of US government in collaboration with some major agencies. Do you think they know that there is this psionic connection with whatever this phenomenon is?
I mean, yes, the people who are paying attention now, right? So because it's data, so some of these people have actually seen it with Chris. People are aware of Skywatcher. People are aware of. I mean, I think the Skywatcher team talks about their former government work. So I think there's for people who not everybody is interested in this, right? So there's so many.
Why not though? I mean, that's the thing that I find perplexing. Why not? I mean,
I think most Americans are pretty busy, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
There's
When
lots
I've
of
talked
interesting
to
things that I don't have time for.
yeah,
But
when I've talked to senior leaders at some IC agencies and I tell them like I was what I was doing or what I'm a part of, they're like, "Oh, that's cool. Okay, well, I have my account to worry about." And so by your account, like your
Yeah.
area of interest or whatever your workload is, and they're like, "Okay, I don't have time for that." Like, cool.
but but I mean, I'll just state the obvious
Adult
here.
learning. What is relevant to us? So for us, our responsibility was the highest performing space technologies, the highest performing energy technology. So to be fair, when I first saw this in 2010, I thought, okay, this is a thing, great. But as an adult learning, what do you do with it? Who cares? I don't want to say who cares, but interesting. But then what do you do with it? So the people who have responsibilities to forward these things, they do, I think, have interest. I think people of faith, in many cases have interest.
But it's more than just a faith thing. I mean, let's state the reality here. The implications are that there is a non-human, highly advanced intelligence using extraordinary technology to engage with humanity, that it probably goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years, right through the course of humanity. It responds in most cases, or in some cases, to love. I mean, why isn't that on the front pages of every newspaper and the primary leads on every television channel in the country and the world?
Maybe soon it will be. But I will say, when I have summoned some orbs and Crafton before, I never said a prayer. So for me, it's not tied with religion because I don't consider myself religious anymore. I'm spiritual. So I've never said a prayer until the other night with the lovely people here. So it was my first time with them responding to prayer. But like in Egypt, when we saw orbs in Egypt on the boat that night, I didn't say a prayer. I just set an intent and said, "We're here and let us record you if that's possible." And said a few other things, but I never said, the Lord's Prayer or Hail Mary or anything like that.
And when I said people of faith, I think I might have miscommunicated. So we work with a wide range of people who have a range of faith, or they're not spiritual and they're not religious, and they're very interested in this. What I meant when I said people of faith are interested in this, while the US government has done some work towards disclosure, many of the major faiths have also written about this phenomena and some of the advanced physics or phenomena, for instance, gravitational modification, or anti-gravity. That's something that the church has written quite a bit about and they've validated. So there has actually been disclosure from a variety of faith institutions that take this very seriously. So I didn't mean to say that, quite a breadth of all people are interested in this or not, but
there was a mic drop moment in a podcast that you hosted or co-hosted, Anna, in December last year, 2024. And you co-hosted a discussion on a podcast called the Ecosystemic Futures Podcast. And what was interesting about this was a NASA convergent aeronautics project in collaboration with a company called Shoshin Works. And the title of this was Beyond Conventional Physics, Extended Electrodynamics, Lattice Confinement Fusion, Zero Point Energy, and Advanced Propulsion. And I was actually working in my garden when I was listening to this podcast on my headphones, and I was so shocked I sat down on the grass and listened to it 3 times because I was
Oh, wow.
profoundly affected by the implications of what was being revealed. One of the guests was an engineer named Richard Bandurik from a company called Field Propulsion Technologies. And in your podcast, he disclosed that he had worked on, quote, off-world metamaterials that he said were determined to be such by isotopic analysis, and that he'd done this under special access programs since the 1980s. And I'm
I
sorry to
don't
go
think
into the
he
detail.
said special access programs. That is something that people thought, but I think he said that he worked on it with NGOs, and
Oh, okay. What I
yeah,
read said that it was special access programs, but that might be
yes.
somebody taking a bit of
That is the
literary license.
perception that people have,
Right.
is that how is he, so one of the criticisms was, how can he talk about this if he was in a special access program? And what he
Exactly.
has said subsequently was that was not a special access program, and he is not subject to those constraints. But
But
that is the perception that people have.
specifically, and I really think it's important because I want to pay tribute to the work you've done in this area, he acknowledged he'd worked in a company doing reverse engineering, that another company, or another NGO rather, had provided that company with, quote, a highly advanced material for study. He admitted he was commandeered into classified programs, which is probably where the special access program illusion came from. And during those studies, he concluded he was working on non-USA technology, is the way he put it. And he went into a whole series of elaborate explanations, but the thing that blew me away was that he described how when he was trying to analyze these materials, they hid how they function. They turned to dust deliberately, as if they were preset to disintegrate when they start working on them. Small slithers of the metal he worked on tried to cloak themselves with the environment. And just to add to this tantalizing mix, my good friend Hal Puthoff stepped in at the very end and concurred that he seemed to be agreeing with what was being described, some of the things that Richard was describing. Now, that podcast came in December last year, and it kind of disappeared. What was the sequel, Anna? What happened?
So there were a number of conversations. So both Hal and Richard were in a group of people that, I and a few people brought together across the interagency, advanced technologies, energy, communications, space tech. And so that was folks from a number of agencies. This was unclassified, and brought people together, and also worked to share as much of that as possible publicly. And so then Diane Finkhausen was amazing, for her leadership. Really, she's the one who stood up that NASA podcast with her business, Shoshin Work. So she's a tremendous leader in this field. And it was just, we probably put out 40 hours of UAP type content, across the NASA podcasts, and then also in the interagency space disruptors days, which are also available
I
online.
just saw that podcast as an extraordinarily refreshing antidote to all of the debunking and denialism that comes from so much of government, notably from ARRO, the Pentagon's UAP investigation office. I mean, it's irreconcilable, isn't it? You've got here an engineer, a respected engineer, before a group of eminent scientists acknowledging that he has worked on off-world materials. How
And
do
a
you
number of people have, so that specific account, I mean, that's distinctive, right? So I wouldn't be able to weigh in one way or the other on those specific materials, but a number of esteemed scientists and researchers have shared, publicly and also in Congress, that there are reverse engineering programs. And it's kind of, when you just think logically. I mean, I live in Virginia. We have, I've said this before, but there was this one time that there was a deer out in front of my house that, we needed to get a deer retrieval. So if there's craft, yeah, it's more interesting than a deer. There will be craft retrieval. And then if you're an engineer or a scientist, of course you reverse engineer things. So that's just obvious. If there's something, you will retrieve it, you will reverse engineer it. So a number of really good people have spoken to that. And it would be nice to be able to celebrate the people in these programs for what they've achieved and what they've built. I mean, many people say that extraordinary things have been built and that the United States does have access to some, except we certainly do have access to exceptional technologies, in terms of which ones, which programs with which origins. This is a leading country in the world in terms of innovation. So to be able to see the parts of that are not weapons based, to be able to celebrate the accomplishments of these people who have been building this out, presumably over many decades. Scientists and just humanity would benefit from it.
Sarah, you've said the word synchronicity earlier. Clearly, you don't think it's just a coincidence that those objects manifested themselves over the White House and the Congress that special evening before probably one of the most momentous UAP hearings of recent time. Do you think whatever that intelligence is, that non-human intelligence, was trying to send you a message that night?
Oh, absolutely. They're sending a very historic message. The timing of it, they knew we were going to be together. They knew we were going to be there. I think the message was we are here, and we had the amazing amount of people. Like it wasn't just one or two people to witness it; it was a handful of us, and to be able to speak on this platform our truth and what we saw is incredible. So yes, there was a message of we're here, and it was very loving and it was playful and it responded to us. And we were doing a prayer, our very last prayer, and even saw something that was very colorful that went across the sky. So it was amazing. And yeah, the message is I would say we are here, but we've already known that they're here, right? We've known for thousands of years that we're here or they're here. I think it's just a good reiteration of the time's coming soon for something.
It's very easy to get disconsolate, though, Anna, with the pace, because with the Pentagon, it's kind of one step forward, two steps back. They seem to be in a denialism phase at the moment. And there's been optimistic glimpses from Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence. There's been hints from the head of the FBI, Kash Patel, and over at the CIA, John Ratcliffe. But nobody seems to have moved yet. Are you aware of any moves in government to consider any kind of possible disclosure to the public about a non-human intelligence engaging with this planet?
One of the things that's been interesting about seeing the phenomena is it often presents itself in a manner where there's some degree of ambiguity. So it shows you enough so that you should be able to see there's something interesting and unusual going on here. But if it's too disruptive, there's that ability to kind of focus on what you're doing and not engage with it. So, I guess it's one of these things that when we look at changes in society, it isn't always that everybody has to get engaged right at the beginning. So I think one of the things that's been important for many of us, because we've served in government, is we do want to make this information available to everybody. I mean, as a mother, it's important to me that my children know what's going on. It's important to me that other people's children have just as much access to that knowledge and that ability to engage with this or not. But most big changes in society, until it's already happened completely, society is not engaged, so it's totally fine. So there's way more people engaged in UAP technology than say quantum, right? There's way more information on UAP technology than quantum. There's so much. So this quest for more disclosure, and it's nice when amazing things come from the government, but usually the private sector isn't actually looking to the government to lead. So it's kind of, I feel like we've gotten more than I need out of the government. And it's certainly, if they want to transfer some exceptional technologies, would be so grateful for that. Would love to see, the dissemination of what we have that's shareable. But, we don't really need to, we've heard so much. I mean, the president going like this on Rogan, I mean, that's enough for me. I don't need him to, and I would be grateful for anything President Trump additionally wants to share, but I think he's actually done his part, to a certain extent.
So, Chris Bledsoe, are you back on audio, my friend? Can you hear me? Chris, can you hear me? No, he can't hear me. Look, I think I might just bring it to a wrap because unfortunately Chris can't hear me anymore and neither can he speak. I think, interestingly enough, if Chris was able to talk to us right now, unfortunately his mic has died for some reason. If Chris was able to talk to us now, I'm sure he would want me to echo what he said previously to us on Reality Check, which is that he does think that there is some kind of an event going to happen, probably in 2027, where the public are left in absolutely no doubt about the existence of a non-human intelligence. But the message I take from you, Anna, and indeed from you, Sarah, and you, Chris, is that what is probably going to make the public more aware of the phenomenon isn't government. It's not going to be a leadership role from government reading from a lectern in the White House. It's going to be experiences like the ones you all enjoyed over the White House and the Congress on the evening prior to the UAP hearing. So thank you to all of you, Anna Brady-Estevez, Sarah Gamm and Chris Bledsoe. Thank you for joining Reality Check and look forward to talking to you again in the future. And before we go, please don't forget to send in your questions for our weekly question and answer. You can email us at realitycheck@newsnationnow.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.